This is The Poisoned Dow 08, read by Geoffrey Beevers.
"Good morning, miss," said Mr. Montague Egg, commercial traveller, removing his trilby with a flourish as the front door opened. "Here I am again, you see. Not forgotten me, have you? Because I couldn't forget a young lady like you. How's his lordship today? Think you'd be willing to see me?" He smiled pleasantly. The parlour-maid, however, seemed nervous. "I don't... Oh, yes, come in, please. His lordship... Well, I'm afraid..." Mr. Egg stepped in promptly, sample case in hand, and found himself confronted by a policeman who demanded his name and business. "A travelling representative of Plummet and Rose, Wines and Spirits, Piccadilly," said Mr. Egg. "Here's my card." "Plummet and Rose," said the policeman. "Just sit down a moment, will you? The inspector will want to have a word with you." Somewhat astonished, Mr. Egg took a seat, and in a few minutes' time was ushered into a sitting-room occupied by a police inspector and another policeman with a notebook. "Ah," said the inspector. "Take a seat, Mr. Egg. Perhaps you can give us a little light on this affair. Do you know anything about a case of port that was sold to Lord Borrowdale last spring?" "Certainly, if you mean the Dow 1908. I made the sale myself. I just called to ask his lordship how he liked it and if he'd care to place a further order." "That seems all right," said the inspector. "Well, Mr. Egg, Lord Borrowdale was found dead in his study this morning. The circumstances suggest his having taken poison, and it looks as if the poison was given to him in a glass of port." "Don't say," said Mr. Egg. "I'm sorry to hear that. It's not the sort of publicity we care for. What makes you think it was the port?" The inspector pushed a decanter across the table. "See what you think yourself, and here's a glass if you want one, but I shouldn't advise you to swallow anything." Mr. Egg sniffed at the decanter and frowned. He poured out a thimbleful of the wine, sniffed, and frowned again. Then he put a drop on his tongue and spat it out delicately into a flower-pot. Oh, dear," he said. "Tastes as though the old gentleman had dropped his cigar ash into it." "You're not far out. The doctor says it looks like nicotine poisoning. Now, here's the problem. Lord Borrowdale used to drink a couple of glasses of port every night after dinner. Last night, the wine was taken in, as usual, at 9. It was a new bottle, and Craven, the butler, brought it up from the cellar in one of those basket things. James, the footman, followed him. Lord Borrowdale inspected the bottle. Craven, the butler, drew the cork and decanted the wine. Then they both retired to the kitchen and heard Lord Borrowdale lock the study door after them. He was writing his memoirs, it seems. He was a famous judge, you know, and some of the papers he was using were confidential. Well, this morning the study door was still locked, and when it was broken open they found him lying dead on the floor. The doctor says he must have died at about 10 o'clock. "Suicide?" suggested Mr. Egg. "He had no worries, and his health was excellent," said the inspector. "But how was it he didn't notice the bad taste of the wine?" "Oh, he seems to have been smoking a cigar," said the inspector, "and he was suffering from a cold, so his taste and smell may have been dulled. There are no fingerprints on the decanter or the glass except his own and those of the butler and the footman, and the windows were fastened on the inside." "And the decanter?" asked Mr. Egg. "Was it clean?" "James washed it before he went to the study. The cook saw him do it. The glass was wiped by James when he put it on the tray, and then the whole thing was carried to the study, though James the footman recollects that in the hall a Miss Wainfleet spoke to him for a moment." "Oh, Miss Wainfleet? That's the niece, isn't it? I saw her on my last visit. A very charming young lady," said Mr. Egg. "Lord Borrowdale's heiress," remarked the inspector. "A very nice young lady," said Mr. Egg. "The seal on the cork now. Lord Borrowdale saw it?" "Yes. Here's what's left of it." The inspector produced an ashtray with a few fragments of sealing wax and some cigar ash. Mr. Egg inspected them. "That's ours, all right," he pronounced. "How about the strainer?" "Washed out that afternoon in boiling water by the kitchen maid. Taken out with the bottle and washed again at once, unfortunately. It might have told us something about when the nicotine got into the port wine." "Well," said Mr. Egg, "it didn't get in at our place. Where is the bottle, by the way?" "Packed up to go to the analyst," said the inspector, "but you can have a look at it. Podgers, let's have that bottle again." The constable produced the port bottle, its mouth plugged with a clean cork. Mr. Egg removed the cork and took a sniff at the contents. His face changed. "Where did you get this bottle from?" he demanded. "From Craven, the butler. He took us along to the cellar himself. It was standing on the cellar floor at the end of a row of empties. He said he put them on the floor till the time came for them to be taken away." Mr. Egg tilted the bottle. A few drops of thick red liquid escaped into his wine-glass. He smelt and tasted them again. "No nicotine there," said Mr. Egg. "No, you'll have to send it to be analysed, but you'll find that bottle innocent." "So we concentrate on the decanter," said the inspector. "Just so. Do you happen to know how many of the bottles had been used?" said Mr. Egg. "Well, Craven can tell us. Why?" "Just to be sure that this is the right bottle," said Mr. Egg. "I shouldn't like to feel I've misled you in any way." The inspector rang the bell, and the butler appeared, an elderly man of respectable appearance. "Craven," said the inspector, "Mr. Egg is interested in the history of the port wine." "This bottle," said Mr. Egg, "it's the one you opened last night?" "Yes, sir." "How many have you got left?" asked Mr. Egg. "I couldn't say, sir, without the cellar book." "And that's in the cellar, eh? I'd like to have a look at your cellars. I'm told they're very fine." "Yes, we'll all go and look at the cellar," said the inspector, and Craven bowed and led the way, pausing only to fetch the keys from his pantry. "This nicotine now," asked Mr. Egg as they proceeded down a long corridor, "is it very deadly?" "I understand from the doctor," replied the inspector, "that a few drops of the pure extract would produce death in anything from 20 minutes to 7 or 8 hours. "And how much of the port had his lordship taken?" said Mr. Egg. 2 glasses?" "Yes, sir," said Craven, "to judge by the decanter." "And tell me," said Mr. Egg, "is there a pond or stream in the garden, Mr. Craven? You see, somebody must have brought the nicotine in something, you know. What would they do afterwards with the bottle, or whatever it was?" "Throw it among the bushes, or bury it," said Craven. "How stupid of me," confessed Mr. Egg. "Ah, this is the cellar, is it? Splendid. A real slap-up outfit, I call this." They went in. "Here is where the Dow 1908 stood, sir," said Craven. "Number 17 bin. 1, 2, 3½ dozen remaining, sir." Mr. Egg nodded. "Yes," he said, "here are the Dow 1908. Sad to think his lordship will never enjoy them. 3½ dozen. A fine old gentleman, Lord Borrowdale, though something of a tough nut." "He was hard, sir," agreed Craven, "but just. A very just master." "Quite. And these, I take it, are the empties. 12, 24, 20, 29, and 1 is 30, and 3½ dozen is 42, 72. 6 dozen. Good." He lifted the empty bottles one by one. "They say dead men tell no tales, but they talk to me. This one, for instance. If this ever held our Dow 08, you can take me out and scramble me. Wrong smell. And that splash of whitewash was never put on by us. Easy to mix up one empty bottle with another. 12, 24, and 28, and 1 is 29. I wonder what's become of the 30th bottle." "I never took one away," said Craven. "Just a moment," interrupted the inspector. "Do you say that bottle doesn't belong to the same bunch of port wine?" "No, but no doubt Lord Borrowdale sometimes went in for a change of vintage." Mr. Egg inverted the bottle and shook it. "Quite dry. Curious. Now that other bottle, the one you said was opened last night, Craven, how did you come to make a mistake like that? If my nose is to be trusted, that bottle had been open a week, at least." "Somebody must have changed it round," said Craven. "I think," the inspector put in, "we'll get this cellar properly examined. Now, if you'll just step upstairs with me, Mr. Egg, I'd like a word with you." They returned to the upper air. "I don't know if you realise, Mr. Egg," observed the inspector, "the inference of what you said just now. Supposing you're right about this bottle not being the right one, somebody's changed it on purpose and the right one's missing. And what's more, the person that changed the bottle left no fingerprints behind him, or her. Yes, said Mr. Egg, and it looks as if the poison had been in the bottle after all, doesn't it? And that, you're going to say, is a serious lookout for our firm, seeing our seal was on the bottle when it was brought into Lord Borrowdale's room. And, Mr. Egg, said the inspector, smiling, since nobody but you had any interest in changing that bottle over, I ought to clap the handcuffs on you. Now, that's a disagreeable inference, protested Mr. Egg, and I hope you won't follow it up. Don't you think that before we do anything else, it would be a good idea to have a look in the furnace room? The furnace room? It's a place that Craven particularly didn't mention when we were asking where anybody might have got rid of something. The inspector agreed, and with the help of a couple of constables, the ashes of the furnace that supplied the central heating were raked over. The first find was a mass of semi-molten glass, which might once have been part of a bottle. Well, you might be right, said the inspector, but we're not likely to get any nicotine out of this. From the ashes he picked out a thin piece of twisted metal to which a lump of charred bone still clung. What on earth's that? Said the inspector. It doesn't look like much, but I think it might once have been a corkscrew, said Mr. Egg. And if you'll look here, you'll see that the metal part of it is hollow. And I shouldn't be surprised if the thick bone handle was hollow too. Badly charred, of course, but if you were to split it open and found a hollow inside and possibly a little melted rubber, that might explain a lot. Mr. Egg, exclaimed the inspector, I think I see what you're getting at. If this corkscrew had been made hollow and contained a rubber reservoir inside like a fountain pen filled with poison, the poison might be made to flow down the hollow shaft of the corkscrew and into the Borrowdale's port by pressure on some sort of plunger arrangement. That's it, said Mr. Egg. And look, there's even a little hole in the metal at the tip of the actual screw. But who? The man who drew the cork, said Mr. Egg. The man whose fingerprints were on the bottle. Craven? The butler? But where's his motive? Lord Borrowdale was a judge, said Mr. Egg, and a hard judge too. If you were to have Craven's fingerprints sent up to Scotland Yard, they might recognise them. I don't know, it's possible. Or Craven might be mentioned in Lord Borrowdale's memoirs that he was writing. Neither Scotland Yard nor Miss Wainfleet, the niece, had anything to say against the butler, but the records of Lord Borrowdale's judicial career showed that many years before he had inflicted a savage sentence of penal servitude on a young man named Craven, who was by trade a skilled metal worker and involved in a fraud upon his employer. Further investigation showed that this young man had been released from prison 6 months ago. He was Craven's son, of course, said the inspector, and he had the skill to make a corkscrew just like the one used in the household. Wonder where they got the nicotine from. Well, we shall soon be able to check that. But when did you begin to get interested in Craven, Mr. Egg? Oh, I was interested in Craven a long time ago. You see, the first time I called here, he addressed me as young fellow, and said tradesmen should go round to the back door. We have a saying in the trade, whether you're wrong or whether you're right, it's always better to be polite. I simply felt that, as a butler, Craven wasn't quite right. And it was true, wasn't it? Very true, said the inspector. Very true indeed.
That was The Poisoned Dow 08 by Dorothy L. Sayers, read by Geoffrey Beevers. The producer was Mitch Raper. The next story is Murder in the Morning, read by Geoffrey Beevers. Monty Egg goes out of his way to talk to a prospective client, only to find the man lying dead on the kitchen floor.
"Half a mile along the main road to Ditchley and turn off to the left at the signpost," said the commercial traveller in mangles, "but you'll be wasting your time." "Oh, well," said Mr. Montague Egg cheerfully, "I'll have a shot at the old bird. He's supposed to be rich, isn't he?" "Mattresses stuffed with gold sovereigns, or so the neighbours say," said the traveller in mangles. The main road was thronged with the usual traffic of a Saturday morning in June, but as soon as Mr. Egg turned into the lane by the signpost which said Hatchford Mill 2 miles, he was plunged into a solitude and silence. At last Mr. Egg caught sight of the tiny cottage set in the middle of a field, and he began to think that the traveller in mangles had been right. Mr. Pinchbeck was not a likely customer for the wines and spirits of Messrs. Plummet and Rose of Piccadilly. Mr. Egg stopped his car at the entrance to the field, lifted the gate, dragged it open, and drove forward. The cottage door was shut. Mr. Egg knocked, but got no answer. Mr. Egg stepped up to the window and looked in. What he saw made him whistle softly. He returned to the back door, pushed it open, and entered. Mr. Pinchbeck was lying on the kitchen floor. He was extremely dead. Mr. Egg laid the tablecloth over him. Then he looked at his watch, which said 10:25. He made a rapid tour of the premises, then set off to fetch the police. The inquest on Humphrey Pinchbeck took place the following day, and resulted in a verdict of wilful murder against some person or persons unknown. During the next fortnight, Mr. Montague Egg watched the newspapers avidly. The police were following up a clue. A man was requested to communicate with the police. A man with a red beard and a check suit driving a sports car with the number WOE 1313. The man was found, the man was charged, and Montague Egg was informed that he would be required to give evidence before the magistrates at Beechhampton. The accused, who gave his name as Theodore Barton, age 42, profession poet, was a tall, powerfully built man in flamboyant tweeds and with an air of disreputable magnificence about him. Montague Egg gave evidence of the finding of the body. He mentioned that the time was 10:25 a.m. on Saturday, June the 18th, and that the body was still quite warm. The kitchen was disordered, as though there had been a struggle, and a blood-stained poker lay beside the dead man. He had made a search before sending for the police. In a bedroom upstairs he had seen a heavy iron box standing open and empty with the keys hanging from the lock. There was no other person in the cottage, but there were marks as though a large car had recently stood in a shed at the back of the house. In the sitting room were the remains of breakfast for 2 persons. He, Mr. Egg, had spent 5 or 10 minutes in searching the cottage and had then driven back by the way he came. The next witness was a baker named Bowles. He had called at the cottage at 10:15 to deliver the bread. He had gone to the back door, which had been opened by Mr. Pinchbeck in person. The old gentleman had appeared to be in perfect health, but flurried and irritable. He hadn't seen any other person in the kitchen, but had an impression that before he knocked, he had heard 2 men's voices talking loudly. Mrs. Chapman from Hatchford Mill then came forward to say that she went in every weekday to do a bit of cleaning. She arrived at 7:30 and left at 9. On that Saturday she had come as usual to find that a visitor had arrived unexpectedly the night before. She identified the accused, Theodore Barton, as that visitor. She saw his car in the shed, and she had noticed the number WOE 1313, thinking that there was an unlucky number and no mistake. She had set breakfast for the 2 of them. The milkman and the postman had called before she left. Nobody else ever called at the cottage, so far as she knew. She had never known Mr. Pinchbeck have a visitor before. She also thought the old man was not in the best of spirits. At this point, the police put in a statement made by the accused on his arrest. He said that he was the nephew of the deceased, and frankly admitted that he had spent the night at the cottage. On hearing that his nephew was hard up, Pinchbeck had remonstrated with him about following a profession like poetry, but had offered him a loan, which he had accepted. Mr. Pinchbeck had then opened the box in his bedroom and handed over 10 fivers, adding a little sermon on hard work and thrift. This had happened at about 9:45, at any rate after Mrs. Chapman was off the premises. The box had appeared to be full of banknotes and securities, and Mr. Pinchbeck had expressed distrust both of Mrs. Chapman and of tradesmen in general. The accused said he had had no quarrel with his uncle, and had left the cottage at 10 o'clock or thereabouts and driven on to Beechhampton. There he had left his car with a friend, to whom it belonged, and hired a motorboat, and gone to spend a fortnight in Brittany. He had heard nothing about his uncle's death till the arrival of Inspector Ramage. He'd hurried back to establish his innocence. The police theory was that as soon as the last tradesman had left the house, Theodore Barton had killed the old man, taken his keys, stolen the money, and escaped, supposing that the body would not be found until Mrs. Chapman arrived on the Monday morning. Mr. Barton's solicitor was extracting from Inspector Ramage the admission that the only money found on the accused at the time of his arrest was 6 5-pound notes and a few shillings worth of French money, when Mr. Egg became aware that somebody was breathing hard down the back of his neck. On turning round, he found himself face to face with an elderly woman, whose eyes seemed ready to pop out of her head with agitation. "I beg your pardon," said Mr. Egg. "Am I in your way?" Oh, thank you. Oh, do tell me what I ought to do, poor man. He isn't guilty at all. I know he isn't. Please, please stop them." She appeared so earnest that Mr. Egg rose boldly to his feet and exclaimed, "Your worship." Everybody stared. "There is a lady here," said Mr. Egg, "who tells me she has important evidence on behalf of the accused." All eyes focused on the lady, who started crying, "Oh dear, I'm so sorry. I'm afraid I ought to have gone to the police before." The solicitor came forward. The lady was extricated, and a whispered consultation followed. After this, the bench decided that they would hear the evidence, and the lady was put in the box and sworn in the name of Millicent Adela Queek. "I am a spinster," she said, "and employed as art mistress at Woodbury High School for Girls. Saturday the 18th was a holiday, and I thought I would have a picnic at Melbury Woods. On the main road to Beachhampton, I pulled up at a garage a little way beyond Ditchley. I asked the man there to fill my tank, and while I was there, I saw this gentleman, Mr. Barton, the accused, drive up in his car. He was coming from Ditchley and driving rather fast. He pulled up on the left-hand side of the road. The garage is on the right, but I saw him distinctly. I couldn't mistake him. His beard, you know, and the clothes he was wearing. It was the same suit he's wearing now. Besides, I saw the number of his car, WOE 1313. Well, he opened the bonnet and did something to his plugs, and then he drove off." "What time was this?" "Well, when I came to look at my watch, I found it had stopped. But I looked up at the garage clock, and it said 10:20. So I set my watch by that. Then I went on to Melbury Woods and had my picnic. So you see, I don't see how this poor man could have been committing a murder between 10:14 and 10:25, because it must be 20 miles away." Inspector Ramage's face was a study. "When I read the description in the papers," she went on, "I thought it must be the same car that I'd seen because of the number, but of course I couldn't be sure it was the same man, could I? But I thought if I came and saw this gentleman for myself, then I should be quite certain. So I came, and I am quite certain." The magistrate thanked Miss Queek for her intervention, and then adjourned the court for further inquiry. Since it was important that Miss Queek should identify the garage in question as soon as possible, it was arranged that she should set out at once in search of it, with Inspector Ramage and his sergeant. Mr. Barton's solicitor was also to go with them to see fair play for his client. A slight difficulty arose, however. The police car was not big enough to take the whole party, and Mr. Egg, climbing into his Morris, found himself hailed by the inspector with a request for a lift. "By all means," said Monty. "A pleasure. Besides, you'll be able to keep your eye on me, because if that chap didn't do it, it looks to me as though I must be the guilty party." "I couldn't blame you if you did think that," Monty went on, as he drove merrily away in the wake of the police car. "We ought to be getting near it now," said Ramage presently. "We're 10 miles from Ditchley and 25 from Pinchbeck's cottage. Let's see, it'll be the left-hand side of the road going in this direction. Hello, this looks like it. They're pulling up." The police car had stopped before an ugly corrugated iron structure standing on the near side of the road. Mr. Egg brought his Morris alongside. "Is this the place, Miss Queek?" Monty asked. "Well, I don't know. It was like this, and it was about here. Oh, well, there. How stupid of me. Of course this isn't it. There's no clock. There ought to be a clock just over the door. We must go on a little. It must be quite near here." the procession moved forward, and 5 miles further on came once more to a halt. This time there could surely be no mistake. Another hideous garage, this one with a clock. "I'm sure this is it," said Miss Queek. "Yes, I recognise the man," she added, as the proprietor came out. The proprietor, when questioned, was not able to swear to having filled Miss Queek's tank on June the 18th, but in the matter of the clock he was definite. It kept, and always had kept, perfect time. If his clock pointed to 10:20, then 10:20 was the time. He couldn't remember the car with the number WOE1313, but there was no reason why he should. Miss Queek, however, felt quite certain. She recognised the man, the garage, and the clock. "Well," said the inspector, rather ruefully, "unless we can prove collusion, that washes that out. That garage where she saw Barton is 18 miles from Pinchbeck's cottage, and since we know the old man was alive at 10:15, Barton can't have killed him. So we've got to start all over again." "It looks a bit awkward for me," said Monty pleasantly. Inspector Ramage grinned. "We'd better be getting back again." Monty drove the first few miles in thoughtful silence. They had just passed the garage with the clock, when Mr. Egg uttered an exclamation and pulled up. "I've got an idea," he said. He took out a pocket diary and consulted it. "Yes, I thought so. I've discovered a coincidence. Let's check up on it." He replaced the diary and drove on, overhauling the police car. In process of time they came to the garage which had first attracted their attention, but which had displayed no clock. Here he stopped, and the police car stopped also. The proprietor emerged, and the first thing that struck one about him was his resemblance to the man they had interviewed at the other garage. Monty commented politely on the fact. "Quite right," said the man. "He's my brother." "Your garages are alike, too," said Monty. "Bought off the same firm," said the man. "Mass production." "You haven't got a clock, though," said Mr. Egg. "Not yet. I've got one on order." "Never had one?" "Never." "Ever seen this lady before?" The man looked at Miss Queek. "Yes, I fancy I have. Came in one morning for petrol, didn't you, miss? Saturday fortnight or thereabouts. I've a good memory for faces." "What time would that be?" said Mr. Egg. 10 to 11, or a few minutes after. I was boiling up a kettle for my 11s. 10:50, said the inspector. And this is just on 22 miles from the cottage, say half an hour from the time of the murder. 44 miles an hour, he could do that easily in a sports car. Yes, interrupted the solicitor, but just a minute, said Monty. Didn't you, he went on, addressing the proprietor, once have one of those clock faces with movable hands, the kind which are just there to show when lighting up time is? Well, yes, I did. I still got it, as a matter of fact. It used to hang over the door, but I took it down last Sunday. People found it a nuisance. They were always mistaking it for a real clock. And lighting up time on June the 18th, said Monty softly, was 10:20, according to my diary. Well, there, said Inspector Ramage, smiting his thigh. Now that's really clever of you, Mr. Egg. Very clever indeed. But as for Miss Queek, she said precisely nothing.
That was Murder in the Morning by Dorothy L. Sayers, read by Geoffrey Beevers. The producer was Mitch Raper. The last in our trio of Montague Egg stories is called Sleuths on the Scent, read by Geoffrey Beevers. Monty is holed up in a pub when a radio description of a wanted murder suspect seems to fit almost anyone in the room.
The commercial room at the Pig and Pewter Inn presented to Mr. Montague Egg the aspect of a dim cavern, but in the bar parlour things were better. By the cheerful hearth sat Mr. Faggot, an aged countryman. Opposite to him was a large man, obviously a policeman in mufti. At a table sat a youngish man, probably another commercial traveller going by the leather bag at his side. A young man and a girl in motorcycling kit were at another table. Another man, with a hat and Burberry coat, was ordering Guinness at the serving hatch, while in a far corner an indeterminate male figure sat silent and half concealed by a slouch hat and a newspaper. Mr. Egg saluted the company and observed that it was a nasty night. The commercial traveller agreed. "I ought to have got on to Drabblesford tonight, but not with this frost on the road." "Same here," said Mr. Egg, approaching the hatch. "Half of mild and bitter, please." "Cold, isn't it?" "Very cold," said the policeman. "Foul," said the man in the Burberry. "I skidded into a telegraph pole 2 miles out." "Arr," muttered Mr. Faggot. "Well," said Mr. Egg, raising his tankard, "here's luck." "Acquainted with this part of the country, sir?" the commercial traveller asked. "Why, no, it's not my usual beat. Henry Bastable covers it as a rule. Perhaps you know him. He and I travel for Plummet and Rose, wines and spirits. Laid up with rheumatic fever, poor chap, so I'm taking over temporarily. My name's Egg. Montague Egg." "Redwood is my name," the traveller said. "Fragonard and Co., perfumes and toilet accessories. I've got a line here which is doing pretty well." He produced a small flask, the stopper neatly secured with a twist of fine string. "What do you think of this?" He handed the sample to Monty. "Parma violet?" Monty said. "The young lady should be the best judge of this. Allow me, miss." And he handed it to the girl. "Go on, Gert," said the boy with her. He removed the stopper and sniffed the perfume. "Here, put a drop on your handkerchief. I'll do it for you." "Arthur, leave my handkerchief alone," the girl said. "This gentleman won't mind you having a drop if you want it." Arthur winked and sprinkled it on his handkerchief. Monty rescued the flask and passed it to the man in the Burberry. "Excuse me, sir," said the commercial traveller, "but in fact not everybody knows the right way to test perfume. Just dab a little on the hand, wait while the liquid evaporates, and then raise the hand to the nostrils. Like this," said the man in the Burberry, dexterously hitching the stopper out with his little finger, pouring a drop of perfume into his left palm and restoppering the bottle all in one movement. "Yes, I see what you mean." "Oh, that's interesting," said Monty. "Would you like to try it, sir?" He offered the bottle first to the aged countryman, Mr. Faggot, who refused, and then to the policeman, who took a sniff and pronounced it a bit powerful for his liking. Mr. Egg glanced at the silent man in the corner and approached him with a request for his opinion. "No," the stranger said, emerging from behind his barricade of newspaper and displaying a bristling moustache and sulky blue eyes. But then he snatched the perfume from Mr. Egg's hand, sniffed, and thrust the stopper back with such haste that it missed the neck of the flask and rolled under the table. Mr. Redwood, the commercial traveller, hastened to retrieve his property. "Wonder what's bitten him," he muttered. "Better look out for him, Sergeant. We don't want murder done. Well, what would you say if I was to tell you that we retail that large bottle at 3 and 6pence? 3 and 6, said Mr. Egg. "I should have thought that wouldn't pay the duty on the spirit." "Nor it would," triumphed Mr. Redwood, "if it was spirit. But it isn't. It's a trade secret, and I can't say more." Another round of drinks was ordered, and as the landlord passed through the bar parlour, he switched on the wireless, which responded with the 9 o'clock time signal, followed by the voice of the announcer. This is the national programme from London. Before the weather report, here is a police message. In connection with the murder of Alice Stewart of Nottingham, the police are anxious to contact Gerald Beaton, who visited the deceased on the afternoon before her death. He is aged 35, medium height, small moustache, grey or blue eyes. He is thought to be travelling in a Morris car, number unknown. Will this man, or anyone able to throw light on his whereabouts, please communicate with the Superintendent of Police, Nottingham, or with any police station. "Oh, switch it off, someone," urged Mr. Redwood, the traveller in perfume. The landlord did so, exclaiming, "How'd they think anyone's going to recognise a man from that? Medium this and medium the other. Might be anybody." "So it might," said Monty. "It might be me." "Or it might be this gentleman," said Mr. Redwood. "That's a fact," admitted the man in the Burberry. "Yes, or—" Monty jerked his head cautiously towards the newspaper in the corner. "Him?" "Yes," said Redwood, "but nobody else has seen him to look at, unless it's George." George was the landlord. "I wouldn't care to swear to him," said the landlord. "He come straight in here and ordered a drink and paid for it without so much as looking at me. But from what I did see of him, the description would fit him as well as anybody. He's got a Morris car. It's in the garage now."
"So have I," said Monty.
"And I," said the man in the Burberry. "And I," added Redwood. "Beg your pardon, Sergeant, but why don't the police make it a bit easier for the public?" "Because," said the sergeant, "we rely on the descriptions given to us by the public."
"Who is this George Beaton, anyway?" asked Monty.
"Ain't you seen the evening papers?" the sergeant asked.
"No, I've been on the road since 5.
"Well, this old lady, Alice Stewart, lived alone with a maid just outside Nottingham. Yesterday afternoon was the maid's afternoon out, and just as she was stepping out of the door, a bloke drives up in a Morris, or so she says, and he asks to see Miss Stewart, and the girl shows him into the sitting-room, and as she does so, she hears the old girl say, 'Why, Gerald!' Well, the maid goes to the pictures and leaves them to it, and when she gets back at 10, she finds the old lady lying with her head bashed in."
Mr. Redwood nudged Mr. Egg. The stranger in the far corner had ceased to read his paper and was peering round the edge of it. "But, Sergeant, how did the girl know the fellow's surname and who he was?" Monty asked.
She remembered hearing the old lady speak of a man called Gerald Beaton once. "Hey, was that at Lewis?" demanded the boy in the motorcycle kit. "Might have been. The old lady came from Lewis." "Why?" "Oh, because when I was a kid at school, my mother used to mention an old Miss Stewart at Lewis who'd adopted a young fellow out of a chemist's shop. Anyway, the old lady left Lewis. She was supposed to be very rich and to keep her money in a tin box."
"That's interesting," said Mr. Egg. "You ought to tell the police about it."
"Well, I have, haven't I?" said the boy, indicating the sergeant, "though I expect they know it already." "For the present purpose," replied the sergeant, "I am a police station, but you might give me your name and address."
The young man did so. At this point his girlfriend was struck with an idea.
"But what about the tin box? Do you think he killed her to get it?"
"There's nothing in the papers about the tin box," said the man in the Burberry. "Certainly not in the paper our disagreeable friend is reading," murmured Mr. Redwood, and as he spoke, that person rose from his seat and came over to the serving hatch, ostensibly to order more beer.
"I wonder if they'll catch him," Redwood went on. "They must be keeping a sharp lookout. I wondered why they held me up outside Wintonbury to look at my licence. I suppose they're checking all the Morrises on the roads."
"All the Morrises in this district, anyway," said Monty. "They held me up outside Thugford."
"I can't tell you anything about that," replied the sergeant.
The disagreeable man moved away from the serving hatch, and at the same moment the sergeant rose and walked over to a distant table to knock out his pipe. He remained there, refilling his pipe, his bulky form towering between the disagreeable man and the door.
"They'll never catch him," said the disagreeable man suddenly and unexpectedly. "I don't suppose it was this man Beaton at all. The old lady's sitting-room was on the ground floor, and the dining-room window was found open at the top. It would be the easiest thing in the world for a man to slip in through the dining-room and catch her unawares and bash her on the head. There's only crazy paving between the garden gate and the windows, and there was a frost yesterday night, so he'd leave no footmarks on the carpet." "Hold hard," interrupted the sergeant. "How do you know there was crazy paving? That's not in the papers."
The disagreeable man appeared disconcerted.
"I've seen the place," he said. "Went there this morning to look, for private reasons."
"That's a funny thing to do, sir."
"Well, it's no business of yours."
"Oh, no, sir, of course not," said the sergeant. "We all of us has our little hobbies, and crazy paving may be yours."
"Are you a journalist?" suggested Mr. Redwood, the commercial traveller. "That's nearer. Looking at my 3 fountain pens, eh? Quite the amateur detective, aren't you?"
"I don't think the gentleman's a journalist," said Mr. Egg. "But every man carries the marks of his trade, although it's not always as conspicuous as Mr. Redwood's sample case. Now take bottles. I handle them one way. A doctor or a chemist handles them another. This scent bottle, for example. If you or I was to take the stopper out of the bottle, how would we do it? How would you do it, Mr. Redwood?" Me? Said Mr. Redwood. Well, put the thumb and 2 fingers of the right hand to the stopper and elevate them briskly, retaining a firm grip on the bottle with the left hand. The man in the Burberry agreed. There's only one way I know to take out stoppers, and that's to take 'em out. But this gentleman's quite right, all the same, put in the disagreeable man. You do it that way because you aren't accustomed to measuring and pouring with one hand while the other's occupied. But a doctor or a chemist pulls the stopper out with his little finger like this and lifts the bottle in the same hand, holding the measuring glass in his left. So. And when he... Hi! Beaten! Cried Mr. Egg in a shrill voice. Look out! The flask slipped from the hand of the disagreeable man and crashed on the table's edge as the man in the Burberry started to his feet. An overpowering odour of violets filled the room. The sergeant darted forward. There was a brief but violent struggle. The girl screamed. The landlord rushed in from the bar and blocked the doorway. "There," said the sergeant, emerging a little breathless from the mix-up. "You best come quiet. Gerald Beaton, I arrest you for the murder of Alice Stewart, and I warn you that anything you say may be taken down and used in evidence. If someone will give me a hand with him to the door, there's a police car waiting up the road." In a few minutes' time the sergeant returned. "That was a very neat dodge of yours, sir," he said, addressing Mr. Egg, while Mr. Redwood and the landlord together sought to remove the smell of Parma violet from the carpet. "Phew, smells a bit, doesn't it?" He paused. "We knew Beaton was expected this way, and I had an idea that one of you gentlemen might be him, but I didn't know which. The young gentleman here," he meant the motorcyclist, "saying that Beaton had been a chemist was a help, and you, sir, touched him off nicely." "Not at all," said Mr. Egg. "I noticed the way our friend in the Burberry took that stopper out of the bottle the first time. It showed he'd been trained to laboratory work. That might have been pure chance, of course, but afterwards, when he pretended he didn't know the right way to do it, I thought it was time to see if he'd react when I called his name." "Good idea," said the disagreeable man, agreeably this time. "Ah," said the sergeant, "you gave me a bit of a turn, sir, with that crazy paving." "Professional curiosity," said the other, with a grin. "I write detective stories. But our friend Mr. Egg seems to be a better hand at the real thing." "We all helped," said Monty. He turned to the aged countryman. "Isn't that so, Mr. Faggot?" The aged countryman rose to his feet. "This place fair stinks of that dratted stuff," he said, "and I can't abide it." He hobbled out and shut the door.
That was Sleuths on the Scent by Dorothy L. Sayers, read by Geoffrey Beevers. The producer was Mitch Raper. Next, we have a sinister short story about 2 strangers who meet on a train. The Man Who Knew How by Dorothy L. Sayers is read by Richard Herndl.
For perhaps the 20th time since the train had left Carlisle, Pender glanced up from his detective novel and caught the eye of the man opposite. It was a secret face. The eyes behind a pair of rimless pince-nez glittered curiously. He was dressed in a dark lounge suit, a raincoat and a shabby soft hat. His age was perhaps about 40. Pender coughed unnecessarily and settled back into his corner, raising the detective story high before his face, barrier fashion. It was useless. The man was still looking at him, and he lowered the book. "Getting tired of it?" asked the man. "Night journeys are always a bit tedious," replied Pender, half relieved and half reluctant. "Would you like to borrow it?" "Oh, thanks very much, but I never read detective stories." He paused, and then said quietly, "You see, I happen to know how to do it. Murder's really quite an easy matter, what with sulphate of thanatol to be bought for 2pence at any chemist's." "Sulphate of what?" asked Pender. "Ah, you think I'm giving something away. Well, it's a mixture of that and 1 or 2 other things, all equally ordinary and cheap. For 9pence you could make up enough to poison the entire cabinet. Of course, one wouldn't polish the whole lot off at once. Might look funny if they all died simultaneously in their baths." "Why in their baths?" "Well, that's the way it would take them. It's the action of the hot water that brings out the effect of the stuff, you see. It's quite a simple chemical reaction, and it couldn't possibly be detected by analysis. It would just look like heart failure. Of course, though, I wouldn't trust anybody with that formula, not even a virtuous young man like yourself. Oh, dear me. Rugby already. I get out here. I have a little bit of business to do at Rugby. The train slowed down and stopped. With a brief good night and a crooked smile, the man stepped onto the platform. Pender watched him stride quickly away into the drizzle. It was on the following afternoon that Pender saw the news item. He'd bought the Standard to read at lunch, and the word Bath caught his eye. Wealthy manufacturer dies in Bath, wife's tragic discovery. A distressing discovery was made early this morning by Mrs. John Brittlesea, wife of the well-known head of Brittlesea's engineering works at Rugby. Mr. Brittlesea was found lying dead in his bath, life having been extinct, according to medical men, for half an hour. The cause of death is pronounced to be heart failure. It was a week or two later that death came to Mr. Pender's own neighbourhood. An old Mr. Skimmings, who lived alone with a housekeeper in a street just round the corner, was found dead in his bathroom. His heart had never been strong. The housekeeper told the milkman that she had always expected something of the sort to happen, for the old gentleman always would take his bath so hot. Pender went to the inquest. The housekeeper gave her evidence. Mr. Skimmings had been the kindest of employers, and she was heartbroken at losing him. No, she hadn't been aware that Mr. Skimmings had left her a large sum of money. The verdict was death by misadventure. Pender, that evening, went for his usual stroll. Some feeling of curiosity moved him to go round past the late Mr. Skimmings' house. As he went by, glancing up at the blank windows, the garden gate opened and a man came out. In the light of a street lamp, Pender recognized him at once. "Hello," he said. "Oh, it's you, is it?" said the man, viewing the site of the tragedy, eh? "What do you think about it all?" "Oh, nothing very much. I didn't know him." "Odd, our meeting again like this." "Yes, isn't it? You live near here, I suppose?" Yes. Do you live in these parts too?" "Me? Oh, no. No, I was only here on a little matter of business." "Well, last time we met," said Pender, "you had business at Rugby." "So I had. And it was while you were at Rugby that old Brittlesea was found dead in his bath, wasn't it?" "Yes. Yes, funny thing, coincidence. He left all his money to his wife, didn't he? She's a rich woman now. Good-looking girl, a lot younger than he was." They were passing Pender's gate. "Come in and have a drink," said Pender, and immediately regretted the impulse. The man accepted, and they went into Pender's bachelor's study. "A remarkable lot of these bath deaths there have been lately, haven't there?" observed Pender carelessly, as he poured out a couple of whisky and sodas. "Remarkable?" said the man. "Well, I don't know. It's a fairly common accident." "Well, I suppose I've been taking more notice on account of that conversation we had on the train. Just makes me wonder whether anybody else had happened on that drug you mentioned. What was its name?" The man ignored the question. "Oh, I shouldn't think so," he said. "I fancy I'm the only person who knows about that. I only stumbled on the thing by accident myself when I was looking for something else. But all these verdicts just show, don't they, what a safe way it would be of getting rid of a person." Pender was standing by his bookcase. His visitor joined him. Casually, he took down a volume of Henry James and glanced at the flyleaf. "That your name, E. Pender?" Pender admitted that it was. "You have the advantage of me," he added. "Oh, I am one of the great Smith clan," said the other, "and I work for my bread. You seem to be very nicely fixed here." Pender explained. He had a legacy, not too large, but sufficient. "Oh, very nice," said Smith. "You're one of the lucky ones, not likely to be needing any sulfate of any useful drugs in the near future, and you never will if you stick to what you've got and keep off women and speculation." No, I shan't be coming to you for assistance yet a while, said Pender. Besides, how should I find you if I wanted you? Oh, you wouldn't have to, said Smith. I should find you. He grinned oddly. Well, I'd better be getting on. Thank you for your hospitality. I don't expect we shall meet again. Oh, but we may, of course. Things work out so queerly, don't they? When he'd gone, Pender took up his glass of whisky, which stood there nearly full. It's funny, he said to himself. I don't remember pouring out that much. He emptied his glass slowly, thinking about Smith. What in the world was Smith doing at Skimming's house? An odd business altogether. If Skimming's housekeeper had known about that money... Oh, but she hadn't known. And if she had, how could she have found out about Smith and his sulphate of... Oh, the word had been on the tip of his tongue then. You wouldn't need to find me. I should find you. What had the man meant by that? And then there'd been that business at Rugby, and again at Skimming's house. And now that Pender knew about it, perhaps his own life was in danger. That whisky. More and more, Pender became persuaded that he had never poured out so much. Smith must have done it while his back was turned. And was it imagination, or had there been something about the flavour of it? A cold sweat broke out on Pender's forehead. A quarter of an hour later, after a powerful dose of salt and water, Pender was downstairs again, very cold and shivering, huddling over the fire. He had had a narrow escape. If he had escaped, one never knew. Pender began to take an interest in inquests. 3 weeks later, he found himself at Lincoln. A man had died of heart failure in a Turkish bath. As Pender emerged from the hall, he saw ahead of him a shabby hat that seemed familiar. He ran after it and caught Mr. Smith about to step into a taxi. "Smith!" he cried, and clutched him fiercely by the shoulder. "What, you again?" said Smith. "Taking notes of the case, eh? Can I do anything for you?" "You devil," said Pender. "You're mixed up in this. You tried to kill me the other day." "Did I? Why should I do that?" "You'll swing for this," shouted Pender. A policeman pushed his way through the gathering crowd. "Here," said he, "what's all this about?" Smith touched his forehead significantly. "It's all right, officer," he said. "The gentleman seems to think I'm here for no good. Here's my card." "But this man tried to kill me," said Pender. "He's a murderer. He's poisoned scores of people." The policeman winked at Smith. "Oh, best be off, sir," he said to him. "I'll settle this. Now, me lad," he held Pender firmly by the arms, "just you keep cool and take it quiet. The gentleman's name ain't Smith or nothing like it, so you leave him alone or you'll be getting yourself into trouble." The taxi had driven away. Pender glanced round at the circle of amused faces and gave in. "All right, officer," he said. "I won't give you any trouble. I'll come to the police station and tell you all about it." "What do you think of that one?" asked the inspector of the sergeant, when Pender had stumbled out of the station an hour later. "Oh, up the pole and halfway round the flag, if you ask me," replied his subordinate. Replied the inspector. "Well, we've got his name and address. Better make a note of them. He might turn up again." The spring that year was a bad one, cold and foggy. It was March when Pender went down to an inquest at Deptford. As he sat in the dingy little court, his bones ached, and he felt as though he were in for a bout of flu. He thought he recognized a face on the other side of the room. He felt in his overcoat pocket, and his hand closed comfortably on something thick and heavy. Not a revolver. He was no hand with firearms. A sandbag was much better. It was meant for keeping out drafts from the door. A good, old-fashioned affair. The inevitable verdict was returned. The spectators began to push their way out. Pender had to hurry now, not to lose sight of his man. He elbowed his way along, muttering apologies. Just before he pushed his way out into the street, he caught the glint of his quarry's spectacles. It was Smith, all right. Where was Smith going? He turned off to the left, down a narrow street. The fog was thicker here. Suddenly the dim shapes of the houses fell away on either side. There was an open space with a lamp vaguely visible in the middle. Pender saw the man standing close beneath the lamp, apparently consulting something in a notebook. 4 steps, and Pender was upon him. He drew the sandbag from his pocket. The man looked up. "I've got you this time," said Pender, and struck. Pender had been quite right. He did get influenza. It was a week before he was out and about again. In spite of the weakness left by the malady, he felt as though a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He tottered down to a favourite bookshop of his in the Strand and picked up a D.H. Lawrence first, at a price which he knew to be a bargain. Encouraged by this, he turned into a small restaurant, chiefly frequented by Fleet Street reporters, and ordered a grilled cutlet. 2 journalists were seated at the next table. "Going to poor old Buckley's funeral?" asked one. "Yes," said the other. "Poor devil. Fancy his getting bumped off like that. Still, it's a rough district. He was a great crime reporter. They won't get another in a hurry." He was a decent sort, too. No end of a leg puller. Remember his great stunt about sulphate of thanatol?" Pender started. That was the word that had eluded him for so many months. A curious dizziness came over him. "And looking at you as sober as a judge," the journalist was saying, "he used to try it out on idiots in railway carriages to see how they'd take it. Would you believe that one chap actually—" "Hello," interrupted his friend. "That bloke over there has fainted. I thought he was looking a bit white."
That was The Man Who Knew How by Dorothy L. Sayers, read by Richard Herndl. The producer was Mitch Raper. In the Peter Wimsey novel Gaudy Night, Harriet Vane asks, "What are you going to do about the people who are cursed with both hearts and brains?" Dorothy L. Sayers may have asked this very question of herself, as her frequent letters reveal a spirited but troubled private existence, involving unsuitable men and an illegitimate child. The following programme is called Cursed with Both Head and Heart, and offers a glimpse of the woman behind the celebrated crime novels. First broadcast in February 1988, it presents a selection of her letters, introduced by Barbara Reynolds and read by Sheila Mitchell.